What's up, Hades? Been ages. How are you? Good. That has been a long time. Long time. Yeah, update that. Sing. Woo. My day has been good. My day has been good, thank you. We're here. What have you been up to these days anyway, Hades? You been busy? Yeah, nice. It gets like that, doesn't it? It does. It does indeed. Good. It's been pretty it's been pretty quiet. How are you, Kendall? Work, busy, I'm tired. Keen to sleep as usual. I'm good. I'm a little tired. Need to read. I'm back. Had some fun downstream anyway. Chapter 9. I might. I might. I will be falling asleep pretty much straight after I. Straight after I flippin' Sam sleep stream. I have no clue, Coca-Cola. I will be doing a 24-hour live stream sometime soon. Well, not 24-hour live stream, a subathon at a max of 24 hours. Who knows? It might be. I might fall asleep on that stream. Yeah, I haven't looked how big it is, Coca Cola. I don't have snacks. I don't eat while I'm at stream. Ooh. I can't stop yawning. My goodness. Alexa, turn on my 7 a.m. alarm. I'm so tired. crazy because it's the weekend. I mean, it's because I did a crazy leg day, to being honest. There we go. Woo. How big is the chapter tonight, actually? Oh, that is insane. That is actually insane. Yeah, I'm gonna start reading now because this chapter's long as frig, and I need to read so I can finish it before it gets too late. Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, Chapter 9, The Dark Mark. Don't tell your mother you've been gambling, Mr. Weasley implored Fred and George as they all made their way back slowly down the purple carpeted stairs. Don't worry, Dad, said Fred gleefully. We got plans for this money. We don't want it all confiscated. Mr. Weasley looked for a moment as though he was going to ask what the big plans were, but seemed to decide upon reflection that he didn't want to know. They were soon caught up in the crowds. One second. Gotta get the ambiance going. There we go. Mr. Weasley got drawn into a disagreement about the cobbing with Charlie. It was only when Ginny fell asleep right at the tiny table and spilled hot chocolate over the floor that Mr. Weasley called a halt to their verbal replays and insisted that everyone went to bed. Hermione and Ginny went into the next tent, and Harry and the rest of the Weasleys changed into pajamas and climbed into their bunks. On the other side of the campsite, they could still hear much singing and the odd echoing bang. Oh, I'm glad I'm not on duty, said Mr. Weasley deeply. I wouldn't fancy having to go and tell the Irish they have to stop celebrating. Harry, who was on the top bunk above Ron, lay staring up at the canvas ceiling of the tent, watching the glowing glow of an occasional leprechaun lantern flying overhead and picturing again some of Crumb's more spectacular moves. He was itching to get back out in his own firebolt and try out the Vronsky feint. Somehow, Oliver Wood never managed to convey with all his wriggling diagrams that the move was supposed to look like. Harry saw himself in robes that had the name on his back and imagined the sensation of hearing 100,000 strong crowd roar as Ludo Bagman's voice echoed through the stadium. I give you Potter! Harry never knew whether he had actually dropped off to sleep or not. His fantasies of flying like Crumb might have all slipped into the actual dreams. I am reading Harry Potter, Chapter 9 of the Goblet of Fire. Get up, Harry! This is urgent! Come on! This is urgent! Harry sat up quickly and the top of his head hit the canvas. Smatter! He said. Dimly, he could tell something was wrong. The noises in the campsite had changed. The singing had stopped. He could hear screams, the sounds of people running. He slipped down from the bunk and reached for his clothes, but Mr. Weasley, who had pulled him out of his jeans, put his jeans over his own pajamas, said, No time, Harry! Just grab a jacket and get outside, quickly! Harry did as he was told and hurried out of the tent, Ron at his heels. By the light of the few fires that were still burning, he could see people running away from the woods, fleeing something that was moving across the field towards them. Something that was emitting odd flashes of light and noises like gunfire. Loud cheering, jeering, roars of laughter and drunken yells were drifting towards them. There came a burst of strong green light which illuminated the scene. A crowd of wizards, tightly packed and moving together with wands pointing straight upwards, and it was marching slowly across the field. Harry squinted at them. They didn't seem to have faces. Then he realized the heads were hooded and their face masked. High above them, floating along in the midair, 4 struggling figures were being contorted into grotesque shapes. It was as though The masked wizards on the ground were puppeteers, and the people above them were marionettes operated by invisible strings that rose from the wands into the air. Two of the figures were very small. I had a couple of people ask if I could read that next. I'm reading through the entire Harry Potter series at the moment, but if you're still around by the time I finish, I might be able to read it. Throne of Glass. What's it called? Game of Thrones. The floating people were suddenly illuminated as they passed over a burning tent, and Harry recognized one of them, Mr. Roberts, the campsite manager. The other three looked as though they might be his wife and children. One of the marchers below flipped Mrs. Roberts upside down with his wand. Her nightdress fell down to reveal voluptuous drawers. She struggled to cover herself up as the crowd below her screeched and hooted with glee. "That's sick!" Ron muttered, watching the smallest muggle child who had begun to spin like a top, 60 feet above the ground, his head flopping limply from side to side. "That's really sick!" "Thank you for the follow, Alan." Hermione and Ginny came hurrying towards them, pulling cloaks over their nightdresses, with Mr. Weasley right behind them. At the same moment, Bill, Charlie, and Percy emerged from the boys' tent, fully dressed with their sleeves rolled up and their wands out. "We're going to help the Ministry," Mr. Weasley shouted over all the noise, rolling up his own sleeves. "You lot, get into the woods and stick together. I'll come and fetch you when we've sorted all this out." Bill, Charlie, and Percy were already sprinting away towards the oncoming marchers. Mr. Weasley tore after them. Ministry wizards were dashed from every direction towards the source of the trouble. The crowd beneath the Roberts family was coming closer than ever. "Come on," said Fred, grabbing Ginny's hand and starting to pull her towards the woods. Harry, Ron, Hermione, and George followed. They all looked back as they reached the trees. The crowd, maintained the Roberts beneath the Roberts family, was larger than ever. They could see the Ministry wizards trying to get through to the hooded wizard in the center, but they were having great difficulty. It looked as though they were scared to perform any spell that might make the Roberts fall. The colored lanterns that had lit the path to the stadium had been extinguished. Dark figures were blundering through the trees. Children were crying. Anxious shouts and panicked voices were reverberating around them in the cold night air. Harry felt himself being pushed further and hither and thither by the people whose faces he could not see. Then he heard Ron yell with pain. "What happened?" said Hermione anxiously, stopping so abruptly that Harry walked into her. "Ron, where are you? Oh, this is stupid. Lumos!" He illuminated her wand and directed its narrow beam around the path. Ron was lying sprawled on the ground. "Tripped over a tree root," he said angrily, getting to his feet again. "Well, with feet that size, hard not to," said a drawling voice behind them. Harry, Ron, and Hermione turned sharply. Draco Malfoy was standing alone nearby them, leaning against a tree, looking utterly relaxed. His arms folded. He seemed to have been watching the scene on the campsite through a gap in the trees. Ron told Malfoy to do something that Harry never thought he would have dared say in front of the Mr. Weasley. "Language, Malfoy," said "Language, Weasley," said Malfoy, his pale eyes glittering. "Hi, Carnival. Hadn't you better be hurrying along now? You wouldn't want her spotted, would you?" He nodded at Hermione, and at the same moment a blast like a bomb sounded from the campsite, and a flash of green light momentarily lit the trees around them. "What's that supposed to mean?" said Hermione defiantly. "Granger, they're after muggles," said Miss Malfoy. "Do you want to be showing off your knickers in midair? Because if you do hang around, they'll be moving this way. And if it would give us all a laugh." "Hermione's a witch," Harry snarled. "Have it your way, Potter," said Malfoy, grinning maliciously. "If you think they can't spot a mudblood, stay where you are." "Watch your mouth," shouted Ron. Everyone present knew that mudblood was a very offensive term for a witch or wizard who had muggle parentage. "Never mind, Ron," said Hermione, seizing Ron's arm to restrain him as he took a step towards Malfoy. There came a bang from the other side of the trees that was louder than anything they had heard. Several people nearby screamed. Malfoy chuckled softly. "Scare easily, don't they?" he said lazily. "I suppose your daddy told you all to hide. What's he up to anyway? Trying to rescue the muggles?" "Where are your parents?" said Harry, his temper rising. "Out there in masks, aren't they?" Malfoy turned his face to Harry, still smiling. "Well, if they were, I wouldn't be likely to tell you, would I, Potter?" "Oh, come on," said Hermione with a disgusted look at Malfoy. "Let's go and find the others." "Keep that bushy head down, Granger," sneered Malfoy. Come on, repeated Hermione, and she pulled Harry and Ron off the path. I'll bet you anything his dad is one of the masked lot, said Ron hotly. Well, with any luck, the Ministry will catch them, said Hermione. Oh, I can't believe this. Where have the others got to? Fred, George, and Ginny were nowhere to be seen, though the path was packed with plenty of other people, all of them looking nervously over their shoulders towards the commotion back at their campsite. A huddle of teenagers in pajamas was arguing vociferously a little along the way. When they saw Harry, Ron, and Hermione, a girl with thick curly hair turned and said, Oist, Madame Maxime, now voulez-vous pardieu? Thank you. I'm trying my best. I'm pretty tired tonight. What? Said Ron. Oh. The girl had spoken, turned her back on him, and as they walked briskly into the darkness, he heard her say, Hogwarts. Box battens, muttered Hermione. Sorry? Said Harry. They must go to Box Battens, said Hermione. You know, Box Battens Academy of Magic. I read all about it in an appraisal of magical educations in Europe. Oh yeah, right, said Harry. Fred and George can't have gone that far, said Ron, pulling at his wand, gliding like Hermione and squinting up the path. Harry dug into his pockets of his jacket for his own wand, but it wasn't there. The only thing he could find were his omninoculars. Oh no, I can't believe it. I lost my wand. You're kidding. Ron and Hermione raised their wands high enough to spread the narrow beams of light further to the ground. Harry looked all around him, but his wand was nowhere to be seen. Maybe it's back in the tent, said Ron. Maybe it fell out of your pocket when you were running, Hermione suggested anxiously. Yeah, said Harry. Maybe. He usually kept his wand with him at all times in the wizarding world, and finding himself without in the midst of a scene like this made him very vulnerable. Thank you for the heart me, Alan. A rustling noise made all three of them jump. Winky the house elf was fighting her way out of a clump of bushes nearby. She was moving in a particular fashion, apparently with great difficulty. It was as though someone invisible was trying to hold her back. There's bad wizards about, she squeaked distractedly as though she leaned forward and labored to keep running. People high in the air. Winky's in getting it out of the way. And she disappeared into the trees on the other side of the path, panting and squeaking as she fought the force that was restraining her. What's up with her? Said Ron, looking curiously after Winky. Why can't she run properly? Bet she didn't ask permission to hide, said Harry. He was thinking of Dobby. Every time he had tried to do something the Malfoys wouldn't like, he had been forced to start beating himself up. You know, house elves get a very raw deal, said Hermione indignantly. It's slavery, that's what it is. That Mr. Crouch made her go up to the top of the stadium and she was terrified. And he's got her bewitched so she can't even run when they start trampling tents. Why doesn't anyone do anything about it? Well, they're house elves, aren't they? Said Ron. You heard old Winky back at the match. House elves is not supposed to have fun. That's what she's like, being bossed around. It's people like you, Ron, Hermione said hotly, who prop up rotten and unjust systems just because they're too lazy to... Another bang echoed from the edge of the wood. Let's keep moving, shall we? Said Ron, and Harry saw him glance eagerly, edgingly at Hermione. Perhaps there was a truth in what Malfoy had said. Perhaps Hermione was in more danger than they were. They set off again, Harry still searching for his pockets, even though he knew his wand wasn't there. They followed the dark path deeper into the woods, still keeping an eye out for Fred, George, and Ginny. They passed a group of goblins who were cackling over a sack of gold they'd undoubtedly won betting on the match, and who seemed to be unperturbed by this trouble in the campsite. Further still along the path, they walked into a patch of silvery light, and when they looked up through the trees, they saw three tall and beautiful Veela standing in a clearing, surrounded by a gaggle of young wizards, all of whom were talking very loudly. I put down 100 sacks of galleons a year, one of them shouted. I'm a dragon killer for the Committee of Disposal of Dangerous Creatures. No, you're not, yelled his friend. You're a dishwasher of the Leaky Cauldron. But I'm a vampire hunter. I've killed about 99 so far. A third young wizard, whose pimples were visible even in the dim light, lit silvery light at the Veela, now cut in. I'm about to become the youngest ever Minister for Magic, I am. Harry snorted with laughter. He recognized the pimply wizard. His name was Stan Shunpike, and he was in fact a conductor in the triple-decker night bus. He turned to tell Ron this, but Ron's face was going oddly slack, and next second Ron was yelling, "Did I tell you I've invented a broomstick that'll reach Jupiter?" "Honestly," said Hermione again, and she and Harry grabbed Ron by the arms, wheeled him around, and marched him away. By the time the sounds of the viola and their admirers had faded completely, they were in the heart of the wood. They seemed to be alone. Everything was much quieter now. "Hey, Aja, how are you? Thank you for the follow. I'm just reading right now, but I'll try and keep up with the chats." Harry looked around. "I reckon we can just wait here. We'll hear anyone else a mile off." The words were hardly out of his mouth when Ludo Bagman emerged from behind the tree right ahead of him. Even by the feeble light of the two wands, Harry could see that a great change had come over Bagman. He was no longer buoyant and rosy-faced. There was no more spring in his step. He looked white and stained. "Who's that?" he said, blinking down at them, trying to make out their faces. "What are you doing here all alone?" They looked at each other surprised. "Well, there's a sort of riot going on," said Ron. Bagman stared at him. "What?" "On the campsite. Some people have got hold of a family of muggles." Bagman swore loudly. "Damn them," he said, looking quite distracted. Without another word, he disappeared with a small puff. "Not exactly on top of things, Mr. Bagman, is he?" said Hermione, frowning. "He's a great beater, though," said Ron, leading the way off to the small path into a small clearing and sitting down on a patch of dry grass at the foot of a tree. "The Windborne Wasps won the league 3 times in a row while he was with them." He took his small figure of Crumb out of his pocket and set it down on the ground and watched it walk around for a while. Like the real Crumb, the model was slightly duck-footed and round-shouldered, but much less impressive on his splayed feet than his broomstick. Harry was listening out for the noise of the campfire. Everything still seemed quiet. Perhaps the riot was over. Bagman's a bit of a bum. "I hope the others are okay," said Hermione after a while. "They'll be fine," said Ron. Imagine your dad, if your dad catches Lucius Malfoy," said Harry, sitting down next to Ron and watching the small figure of Crumb slouching over the fallen trees. "He's always said he'd like to get something on them." "That'd wipe the smirk off Draco's face, all right," said Ron. "Those poor muggles, though," said Hermione nervously. "What if they can't get them down?" "They will," said Ron reassuringly. "They always find a way." "Mad, though, to do something like that with the whole Ministry of Magic's out there tonight," said Hermione. "I mean, how do you think they expect to get away with it? They think they've been drinking, or are they just..." She broke off abruptly and looked over her shoulder. Harry and Ron looked quickly too. It sounded as though someone was staggering towards them through the clearing. They waited, listening to the sound of the uneven steps behind the trees, but the footsteps came to a sudden halt. "Hello?" said Harry. There was a silence. Harry got to his feet and peered around the tree. It was too dark to see very far, but he could sense somebody standing just beyond the range of his vision. "Who's there?" he said. And then, without warning, the silence was rent by a voice unlike any they had heard in the wood, and uttered not a panicked shout, but sound like a spell. "Mos Mordre!" And something vast, green, and glittering erupted from the patch of darkness Harry's eyes had been struggling to penetrate. It flew up through the treetops and into the sky. "What the?" Ron gasped as he sprang to his feet, staring up at the thing that just appeared. For a split second, Harry thought it was just another leprechaun formation. Then he realized it was a colossal skull composed of what looked like emerald stars, with a serpent protruding from its mouth like a tongue. As they watched, it rose higher and higher, blazing in a haze of greenish smoke, etched against the black sky like a new constellation. Suddenly, the wood all around them erupted with screams. Harry didn't understand why, but the only possible cause was the sudden appearance of a skull. Yeah, I think so. I think it'd be the same as people who went through the Holocaust being told that Hitler's back, I'd say. Because that's what this symbol is. Which had now been risen high enough to illuminate the entire wood, like some grisly neon sign. He scanned the darkness of the person who had conjured the skull, but he couldn't see anyone. "Who's there?" he called again. "Harry, come on, move!" Hermione seized the back of his jacket and was tugging him backwards. "What's the matter?" Harry startled to see her face so white and terrified. "It's the Dark Mark, Harry!" Hermione moaned, pulling him as he could. You know who sign? Voldemort! Harry, come on! Harry turned. Ron was hurriedly scooping up his miniature crumb. The three of them started across the clearing, but before they had taken a few hurried steps, a series of popping noises announced the arrival of 20 wizards, appearing from thin air around them. Harry whirled around, and in a split second he registered one fact. Each of these wizards had their wands out. Every wand was pointing right at himself, Ron, and Hermione. Without pausing to think, he yelled, "Duck!" He seized the other two and pulled them down to the ground. "Stupefy!" roared 20 voices. There was a blinding series of flashes, and Harry felt the air above his head ripple as though a powerful wind had swept the clearing. Raising his head at a fraction of an inch, he could see jets of fiery red light flying over from the wizard's wands, crossing each other, bouncing off tree trunks, rebounding into the darkness. "Stop!" yelled a voice he recognized. "Stop! That's my son!" Harry's hair stopped blowing about. He raised his head a little higher. The wizard in front of him had lowered his wand. He rolled over and saw Mr. Weasley striding towards them, looking terrified. "Ron! Harry!" His voice sounded shaky. "Hermione, are you all right?" "Out of the way, Arthur," said a cold, curt voice. It was Mr. Crouch. He and the other Ministry wizards were closing in on them. Harry got to his feet to face them. Mr. Crouch's face was taut with rage. "Which of you did it?" he snapped, his sharp eyes darting between them. "Which of you conjured the dark mark?" "We didn't do that," said Harry, gesturing up at the skull. "Yeah, we didn't do anything," said Ron, who was rubbing his elbow and looking indignantly at his father. "What do you want to attack us for?" "Do not lie, sir," said Mr. Crouch. His wand was still pointing directly at Ron, and his eyes were popping. He looked slightly mad. "You have been discovered at the scene of a crime." "Barty," whispered a wizard in a long woolen dressing gown. "They're kids, Barty. They have never been able to—" "Where did the mark come from, you three?" "Where did the mark come from, you three?" said Mr. Weasley. "Over there," said Hermione shakily, pointing at the place where they had heard the voice. "There was someone behind the trees," they shouted words, an incantation. "Oh, stood over there, did they?" said Mr. Crouch, turning his pop eyes on Hermione, disbelief etched all over his face. "Said an incantation, did they? You seem pretty well informed about how that mark is summoned, Missy." But none of the Ministry wizards, apart from Crouch, seemed to think it was remotely likely that Harry, Ron, or Hermione had conjured the skull. On the contrary, at Hermione's words, they had all raised their wands again and were pointing in the direction she indicated, squinting through the darkness. "We're too late," said the witch in the woolen dressing gown, shaking her head. "They've disappeared." "I don't think so," said a wizard with a scrubby brown beard. It was Amos Diggory, Cedric's father. "Our stunners went right through those trees. There's a good chance we got them." "Amos, be careful," said a few wizards warningly, as Mr. Diggory squared his shoulders, raised his wand, marched across the clearing, and disappeared into the darkness. Hermione watched him vanish with her hands over her mouth. A few seconds later, they heard Diggory shout, "Yes, we've got them! There's someone here unconscious. It's... blimey!" "You've got someone?" shouted Mr. Crouch, sounding highly disbelieving. Who is it?" They heard snapping twigs, the rustling of leaves, and then footsteps as Mr. Diggory re-emerged from behind the trees. He was carrying a tiny, limp figure in his arms. Harry recognized the tea towel at once. It was Winky. Mr. Crouch didn't move or speak as Mr. Diggory deposited Mr. Crouch's elf on the ground at his feet. The other Ministry wizards were all staring at Mr. Crouch. For a few seconds, Mr. Crouch remained transfixed, his eyes blazing in his white face as he stared down at Winky. Then he appeared to come to life again. "This cannot be," he said jerkingly. "No!" He moved quickly around Mr. Diggory and strode up towards the place where he had found Winky. "No point, Mr. Crouch," said Diggory, called after him. "There's no one else there." But Mr. Crouch didn't seem prepared to take his word for it. They heard him moving around, the rustling of leaves as he pushed the bush aside, searching. Hope you guys are enjoying it so far. "Bit embarrassing," said Mr. Diggory grimly, looking down at Winky's unconscious form. "Barty Crouch is out. House elf, I mean to say." I'm off it, Amos, said Mr. Weasley quietly. You don't seriously think it was the elf? Dark Mark's wizard sign. It requires a wand. Yeah, said Mr. Diggory. And she has a wand. What? Yeah, Hermione is a bit interesting early on. Here, look. Mr. Diggory held up a wand and shoved it towards Mr. Weasley. Had it in her hand, so that clause 3 of Code of Wand use broken for a start. No non-human creature to be permitted to carry a use of a wand. Just then was another pop, and Ludo Bagman apparated right next to Mr. Weasley, looking breathless and disoriented. He spun on the spot, goggling upwards at the emerald green skull. The Dark Mark! He panted, almost trampling Winky as he turned inquiringly to his colleagues. Who did it? Did you get them? Barty, what's going on? She's amazing later on. Mr. Crouch returned empty-handed. His face was still ghostly white, and his hands and his toothbrush-white mustache were both twitching. Where have you been, Barty? said Bagman. Why weren't you at the match? Your elf was saving your seat too. Gulp and gargoyles. Bagman had just noticed Winky laying at his feet. What happened to her? I have been busy, Ludo, said Mr. Crouch, still talking in the same jerky fashion, barely moving his lips. And my elf has been stunned. Stunned? Are you lot? For what? Comprehensive drawing suddenly on Bagman's round, shiny face. He looked up at the skull, down at Winky, and then at Mr. Crouch. No, he said. Winky? Conjure the Dark Mark? She wouldn't know how. She needed a wand for a start. And she had one, said Mr. Diggory. I found her holding one, Ludo. It's all right with you, Mr. Crouch. I think we should hear what she's got to say for herself. How are you, Sid? Crouch gave no sign that he heard Mr. Diggory, but Mr. Diggory seemed to take this silence for assent. He raised his own wand, pointed at Winky, and said, Renervate. Winky stirred feebly. Her great brown eyes opened, then she blinked several times in a bemused sort of way. Watched by the silent wizard, she raised herself shakily into a sitting position. She caught sight of Mr. Diggory's feet and slowly, tumultuously, raised her eyes to stare up into his face. Then, more slowly still, she looked up into the sky. Harry could see the floating skull reflected twice in her enormous, glassy eyes. She gave a gasp, looked wildly around the crowd clearing, and burst into terrified sobs. Elf, said Mr. Diggory sternly, do you know who I am? I'm a member of the Department of Regulations of Magic and Magical Creatures. Winky began to rock back and forwards on the ground, her breath coming in sharp bursts. Harry was reminded forcefully of Dobby in the moment of terrified abstinence. As you see, Elf, the Dark Mark was conjured here a short while ago, said Mr. Diggory, and you were discovered moments later right beneath it. An explanation, if you please.
I'm not doing it, sir.
Winky gasped.
I'm not knowing how, sir.
You were found with the wizard in your hand, barked Mr. Diggory, brandishing it in front of her. And as the wand caught the green light that was filling the clearing from the skull above, Harry recognized it. Hey, that's mine, he said. Everyone in the clearing looked at him. Excuse me? Hi, Goblin, how are you? Said Mr. Diggory incredulously. That's my wand, said Harry. I dropped it. You dropped it, said Mr. Diggory in disbelief. Is this a confession? You threw it aside after conjuring the mark? Amos, who do you think you're talking to? Said Mr. Weasley very angrily. Is Harry Potter likely to conjure the Dark Mark? Of course not, mumbled Diggory. Sorry, carried away. I didn't drop it there anyway, said Harry, jerking his thumb towards the trees beneath the skull. I missed it right after we got into the woods. So? Said Diggory. His eyes hardened as he looked to the Winky again, cowering at his feet. You found this wand, eh, Elf? And you picked it up and thought you'd have some fun with it, did you?
He's not doing magic with it, sir,
squealed Winky, tears streaming down the sides of her face and her bulbous nose.
I is just picking it up, sir. I is not making the Dark Mark, sir. I is not knowing how.
It wasn't her, said Hermione. She looked very nervous, speaking up in front of all these Ministry Wizards, yet determined all the same. Winky's got a squeaky little voice.
and the voice we heard doing the incantation was much deeper.
She looked around at Harry and Ron, appealing for their support.
It didn't sound like Winky did it.
No, said Harry, shaking his head.
It definitely didn't sound like an elf.
Yeah, it was a human voice, said Ron. Well, we'll see, growled Mr. Diggory, looking unimpressed. There's a simple way of discovering the last spell a wand performed, elf. Did you know that? Winky trembled and shook her head fanatically, her ears flapping, as Mr. Diggory rose his wand again and placed it tip to tip with Harry's. Prior Incanto, roared Diggory. Hi, Mason. Harry's heard Hermione gasp, horrified, as a giant serpent-tongued skull erupted from the point where the two wands met, but it was a mere shadow of the green skull high above them. It looked as though it was made of thick grey smoke, the ghost of a spell. Demetrius, Mr. Diggory shouted, and the smoky skull vanished in a wisp of smoke. As many times I feel like. Usually it's twice. So, said Mr. Diggory with a kind of savage triumph, looking down upon Winky, who was still shaking convulsively. No, I won't be, Mason.
He's not doing it, she squealed, her eyes rolling in terror. He's not knowing how. He's a good elf. He isn't using wands. He isn't knowing how.
You've been caught red-handed, elf, Mr. Diggory roared. Caught with a guilty wand in your hand. Amos, said Mr. Weasley loudly, think about it. Precious few wizards know how to do that spell. Where would she have learnt it? Perhaps Amos is suggesting, said Mr. Crouch coldly in every syllable, that I routinely teach my servants to conjure the dark mark. There was a deeply unpleasant silence. Amos Diggory looked terrified. Mr. Crouch, not at all. You have now come very close to accusing the two people in this clearing who are least likely to conjure the mark, barked Mr. Crouch. Harry Potter and myself. I suppose you are familiar with the boy's story, Amos. Thank you for the follow, Nikki. Of course, everyone knows, muttered Diggory, looking highly discomfited. And I trust you remember how many proofs I've given over a long career that I despise and detest the dark arts and those who practice them, Mr. Crouch shouted, his eyes bulging again. Mr. Crouch, I never suggested you had anything to do with it, muttered Amos Diggory, now reddening behind his scrubby brown beard. You accuse my elf, you accuse me, Diggory, shouted Mr. Crouch. Where else could she have learnt to conjure it? She might have picked it up somewhere. Precisely, Amos, said Mr. Weasley. She might have picked it up anywhere. Winky, he said kindly, turning to the elf, but she flinched as though he too was shouting at her. Where exactly did you find Harry's wand? Winky was twisting the hem of her tea towel so violently that it was fraying beneath her fingers. I was finding it there, sir, she whispered. There, in the tree, sir. You see, Amos, said Mr. Weasley, whoever conjured the mark could have disapparated right after they had done it, leaving Harry's wand behind. A clever thing to do, not using their own wand, which could have betrayed them. And Winky here had the misfortune to come across the wand moments after and pick it up. But then she'd have been feet away from the real culprit, said Mr. Diggory impatiently. Elf, did you see anyone? Winky began to tremble worse than ever. Her giant eyes flickered from Diggory to Ludo Bagman and then to Crouch. Then she gulped and said, I see no one, sir. No one. Amos, said Mr. Crouch curtly, I am fully aware that in ordinary course of events, you would want to take Winky into your department for questioning. I ask, however, to allow me to deal with her. Mr. Diggory looked as though he didn't think much of this suggestion at all, but it was clear to Harry that Mr. Crouch was such an important member of the Ministry that he did not dare refuse him. You may rest assured she will be punished, said Mr. Crouch coldly. Master, stammered Winky, looking up at Mr. Crouch, her eyes brimming with tears. Master, please. Mr. Crouch stared back, his face somehow sharpened, each line upon it more deeply etched. There was no pity in his gaze. Winky has behaved tonight in a manner that I could not have believed possible, he said possibly. I told her to remain in the tent. I told her to remain there while I was out to sort trouble, and then I find she's disobeyed me. This means clothes.
No, she shrieked, prostrating herself at Mrs. Crouch's feet. No, master, no clothes, no clothes. Harry knew that the only way to turn a house elf was to present her with proper garments. It was pitiful to see the way Winky clutched at her tea towel as she sobbed over Miss Crouch's feet. But she was terrified. Hermione burst out angrily, glaring at Mr. Crouch. Your elf's scared of heights, and those wizards in masks were levitating people. You can't blame her for wanting to get out of her way. Mr. Crouch took a step backwards, freeing himself from contact with the elf, whom he was surveying as though she was something filthy and rotten that was contaminating his... Thank you, Amber, Umbro. Freeing his overly silent shoes. I have no use for a house elf who disobeys me. Thank you, he said coldly, looking up at Hermione. I have no use for a servant who forgets what is due to her master, and to her master's reputation. Winky was crying so hard that her sobs echoed around the clearing. There was a nasty silence, which was ended by Mr. Weasley, who said quietly, Well, I think I'll take my lot back to the tent if nobody got any objections. Amos, the wands told us it can. All it can. If Harry could have it back, please. Mr. Diggory handed Harry his wand and pocketed it. Harry pocketed it. Come on, you three, Mr. Weasley said quietly, but Hermione didn't seem to want to move. Her eyes were still upon the sobbing elf. Hermione, Mr. Weasley said more urgently. She turned and followed Harry and Ron out of the clearing and through the trees. What's going to happen to Winky? Said Hermione the moment they left the clearing. I don't know, said Mr. Weasley. The way they were treating her, said Hermione furiously. Mr. Diggory calling her elf all the time. And Mr. Crouch, all he knows she didn't do it, and he's still going to sack her. He didn't care how frightened she'd been, or how upset she was. It was like she wasn't even human. Well, she's not, said Ron. Hermione rounded on him. That doesn't mean she hasn't got feelings, Ron. It's disgusting. Hermione, I agree with you, said Mr. Weasley quite quickly, beckoning her on. But now is not the time to discuss house elf rights. I want to get back to the tent as soon as we can. What happened to the others? We lost him in the dark, said Ron. Dad, why was everyone so uptight about that skull thing? I'll explain everything back at the tent, said Mr. Weasley tensely. But when they reached the edge of the woods, their progress was impeded. A large crowd of frightened-looking witches and wizards was congregated there. When they saw Mr. Weasley coming towards them, many of them surged forwards. What's going on there? Who conjured it? Arthur, it's not him. Of course it's not him, said Mr. Weasley impatiently. We don't know who it was. It looks like they disapparated. Now, excuse me, please. I want to go to bed. He led Harry, Ron, and Hermione through the crowd and back into the campsite. All was quiet now. There was no sign of the masked wizards, though several ruined tents were still smoking. Charlie's head was poking out of the boys' tent. Dad, what's going on? He called through the dark. Fred, George, and Ginny got back okay, but the others? I've got them here, said Mr. Weasley, bending down and entering the tent. Harry, Ron, and Hermione entered after him. Bill was sitting on the small kitchen table holding a bedsheet to his arm, which was bleeding profusely. Charlie had a large rip in his shirt, and Percy was sporting a bloody nose. Fred, George, and Ginny looked unhurt, though shaken. Dad, did you get them? Said Bill sharply. The person who conjured the mark. No, said Mr. Weasley. We found Barty Crouch's elf holding Harry's wand, but we're none the wiser about who actually conjured the mark. What? Said Bill, Charlie, and Percy together. Harry's wand, said Fred. Mr. Crouch's elf, said Percy, sounding thunderstruck. With some assistance from Harry, Ron, and Hermione, Mr. Weasley explained what had happened in the woods. When they had finished their story, Percy swelled indignantly. Well, Mr. Crouch is quite right to get rid of an elf like that, he said, running away when he'd expressly told her not to, embarrassing him in front of the whole ministry. How would they dare? How would he have looked if she'd been up in the front of the department for the regulation of control? She didn't do anything. She was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. Hermione snapped at Percy, who looked very taken aback. Hermione had always gotten on fairly well with Percy, better indeed than any of the others. Hermione, a wizard in Mr. Crouch's position can't afford an elf who's going to run amok with a wand, said Percy pompously, recovering himself. She didn't run amok, shouted Hermione. She just picked it up off the ground. Look, can someone explain what happened with the skull? Said Ron impatiently. It wasn't hurting anybody. Why is it such a big deal? I told you, it's you-know-who's symbol, Ron, said Hermione. But before anyone else could answer, I read all about it in The Rise and Fall of the Dark Arts. I do. I have the Slytherin box set. And it hasn't been seen in 13 years, said Mr. Weasley quietly. Of course people panicked. It was almost like seeing you-know-who back again. I don't get it, said Ron frowning. I mean, it's only a shape in the sky. Thank you, I got it for my birthday last year. Ron, you-know-who and his followers sent the dark mask into the air whenever they killed Mr. Weasley. The terror it inspired. You have no idea. You're too young. Just picture coming home and finding the dark mark hovering over your house and knowing what you're about to find inside. Mr. Weasley winced. Everyone's worst fear. The very worst. I read every evening, by the way, Wafa. Then, for a moment, there was silence. Then Bill, removing the sheet from his arm to check on his cut, said, Well, it didn't help us tonight. Whoever conjured it, it scared the Death Eaters away the moment they saw it. They all disapparated before we'd got near close enough to unmask any of them. We caught the Robertses before they hit the ground, though. They're having their memories modified right now. Death Eaters, said Harry. What are Death Eaters? It's you-know-who's supporters call themselves, said Bill. I think we saw what's left of them tonight. The ones who managed to keep themselves out of Azkaban, anyway. We can't prove it was them, Bill, said Mr. Weasley, though it was probably, he added hopelessly. If you want him to keep updated, I have a link in my bio with all my socials, Wafa. I go live twice a day. Yeah, I bet it was, said Ron. Dad, we met Draco Malfoy in the woods, and he was as good as told us his dad was one of the nutters under the masks. And we all know the Malfoys are right in with you-know-who. Thank you for the follow, Wafa. But what were Voldemort's supporters? Harry began. Everyone flinched, like most of the wizarding world. The Weasleys always avoided saying Voldemort's name. Sorry, said Harry quickly. What were you-know-who's supporters up to levitating muggles? I mean, what was the point? The point, said Mr. Weasley, with a hollow laugh. Harry, that's their idea of fun. Half the muggle killings back when you-know-who was in power were done for fun. I suppose they had a few drinks tonight and couldn't resist reminding us all that lots of them are still at large. A nice little reunion for them, he finished disgustedly. I'm reading Harry Potter, Saba. Use your brains, Ron, said Bill. If there really were Death Eaters, they worked really hard to keep out of Azkaban when you-know-who lost power, and told all sorts of lies about him, forcing them to kill and torture people. I bet they'd be even more frightened than the rest of us to see him come back. They denied ever being involved with him when he lost his power and went back to their daily lives. I don't think he'd be overly pleased with them, do you? No, whoever conjured the Dark Mark, said Hermione, slowly, were they doing it to show support for the Death Eaters, or to scare them away? Your guess is as good as ours, Hermione, said Mr. Weasley, but I'll tell you this, it was only the Death Eaters who ever knew how to conjure it. I'd be very surprised if the person who did it hadn't been a Death Eater once, even if now they're not. Listen, it's very late, and if your mother hears what happened here, she'll be worried sick. We've got a few more hours sleep, and then try and get up early portkey out of here. Harry got back into his bunk with his head buzzing. He knew he ought to feel exhausted. It was nearly 3 in the morning, but he was wide awake, worried. 3 days ago, it got much longer, but it had only been 3 days he had awoken with a burning scar. And tonight, for the first time in 13 years, Lord Voldemort's mark had appeared in the sky again. What did these things mean? He thought of the letter he had written to Sirius before leaving Privet Drive. Would Sirius have got it yet? When would he reply? Harry lay looking up at the canvas, but no flying fantasies came to him now to ease him back to sleep. And it was long after Charlie's snores filled the tent that Harry finally dozed off. Chapter is finished, guys. Hope you enjoyed. What do you think? Do you like it? So, I'll let you know, Wafa.
since I'm pretty sure you're new, I read. I'm from Australia, so I read a chapter of a book every evening at 9 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. It was a long chapter, but we're getting into it now. We're pretty far into the book. I read every evening at 9 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. Right now I'm reading through the entire Harry Potter series, but that's not the only book I read. Once we finish Harry Potter, I'm gonna put it up to a vote in my Discord server. You can join my Discord server through the link in my bio. I'm gonna put up to a vote, Queensland. I'm gonna put up to a vote once I finish this series about what series we read next. I am impartial to Prison Healer because of how good of a series it was, though. Yeah, it was a long chapter tonight. Yep, sweet. Yeah, there's a link in my bio. You can join it through there. Just let me know because I've locked it so we don't get trolls joining the server. I'm just letting you know, Wafa, as well. There's a VIP chat. And once a month in the VIP chat, I do giveaways. So on the first of every month, I do a giveaway. There you go, Wi-Fi. I've accepted. I'm assuming you're mouse girl. Yep, you're invited. Make sure Wi-Fi as well. I'll give you a quick run through of the server. Sorry, I'll get your face off here. If you go to the get roles section, you can pick a custom color for yourself. And there is a Minecraft realm we have embedded in the server. You can get in by performing any of those 4 things. The easiest one is just reach level 10 in the Discord just by chatting. It's free. Yeah, Sosa. My freaking butter chicken wasn't butter chicken. I was so disappointed. It was really spicy. I don't know what the frick it was. Yeah, it was so spicy. Well, I'm level 31. Maybe. But I got my money back because so Wafa, I didn't get my order. So they gave me food, but it wasn't the food I ordered. So I ate it and then I got my money back. So I don't care. Free dinner tonight, guys. Also, everyone, say hello to Basil. Say hello to Basil, guys. Ta-da! Basil. There is not. Yeah, I'm gonna fine, I ate a lot of fiber. Fair. Well, it's currently 10 p.m. for me, so I won't be eating any more food tonight. Yeah. Well, it's about where I'm going into Monday. Yeah, guys, make sure as well to follow me. You can get into the link in my bios and any any streaming platform now. The world explodes. Sorry, I'm actually dead. Make sure there's more stuff. I have Instagram. I have a YTube account. I have a lot of different stuff. I try and post as much as I can. It does get hard sometimes. Yeah, I'm sorry. Spoiler alert. Fine, just set a respawn beacon, you'll be fine. You did. I just finished it, Jordan. I'm sorry. Why you need to be in the Discord server, Jordan. I literally post when I go live in the Discord server. It's I post about going to the Discord, then I post my I play games I play games in the morning. So 8 a.m. tomorrow, I will be playing some Skyrim. I play games in the morning. No, Johnny. Skyrim, I'll be there yet. Dinkum, League, Stardew Valley, Hogwarts Legacy, Schedule 1, Overwatch. I play a lot of games. I have like tons of them. Look at all my games. Have you ever guys ever seen this game? This game is so derpy. Goose Goose Duck is so fun. Freaking love Goose Goose Duck. Just letting you know, I am going to. So right now, we have 128 members in the Discord server. When I hit 150 members in the Discord server, I'm going to be hosting a like community game day I'm going to try and host one in my server, and I'll be playing like games like Goose Goose Duck, Among Us, Make a Chameleon with you guys and everything. That's if I can get it. But anyway, guys, it is 10 p.m. I'm going to bed. I'm really, really tired. It's in my Discord. It's in my Discord's in the link in my bio, Alan. There's a link tree in my bio. You can just click that, and there's a Discord there for you to. I have no clue. I haven't heard about Mecha Chameleon. Really? Oh, okay. I probably should then. Yeah, it's uninstalled. Oh well. Guys, I am gonna end the live here so I can go to sleep because I'm really tired. For those who just joined my Discord server, there is a stream schedule. I will be live tomorrow 8 a.m. 8 a.m. tomorrow, guys. I hope you all have a fabulous time, whatever time of day it is for you all. I will definitely have a fabulous time because I will be temporarily putting myself in an unconscious state for about 8 hours. Nice. Bye, guys. Okay. I'm going to end the live in 3, 2, 1. Bye-bye. Good night.